generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. We are here to kick off the Bad Batch Season 3 talks. We're very excited to have Austin back with us. Austin has been here with a couple of shows with us, so glad to have you back, Austin.
Oh yeah, I love talking Star Wars.
Yeah, this is our main place to be able to do it, so it's great. So we actually got 3 episodes to kick off this season. It's kind of a way of getting like an hour-long-ish episode to kick it off the season. And then periodically throughout the next couple weeks, we'll either get 1 episode or 2 episodes. They have a whole weird schedule with it. But we're here to talk to you about episode 1, 2, and 3, break it down a little bit for us, and just kind of talk about what our thoughts were. So I guess we can just kick it off with the first episode. I would say each episode definitely had a distinct thing that was going on. We didn't really get any meshing in between because we were left with season 2 where Omega and Hunter / Wrecker are separated. And so it's very separated here in the very beginning of the season. Our first episode follows Omega, and we get to see what she's been up to, what's her life been like, being imprisoned. When it starts, we've only seen her in prison for a couple of days, and we kind of get this idea that, she kind of has a morning routine where she gets checked up on. They're asking her how she's doing. One of the parallels that Sarah and I were talking about when we were watching is that this kind of seemed almost like when in The Mandalorian, when they were checking in on the Imperials, they're saying, "How are you feeling? Are you feeling very Empire-y today?" kind of a thing. And they kept interviewing them. It kind of seemed like that in a way. So yeah, she gets interviewed every morning, how she's feeling. She goes to the lab with her, the worker Emery. She's in charge of collecting blood samples from the different clones. And we don't quite know yet why she's doing it, but we do find out a little later, after Omega has, gotten a blood sample, that Lama Su is saying, if you are going to get a blood sample done, don't let them. Don't let them know, because if they do, you're in big trouble. You're in danger. And so when Lama Su finds out that the blood sample is taken, she discards it and makes sure it's destroyed. So we know something is very, very important with Omega.
Isn't it Nala Se?
Is it Nala Se?
I
Am I
think
getting
so.
mixed up with another Camino person?
I
The
think Lama
Kaminoan.
Su is not in this season.
I'm not sure. One is the scientist, one is like the senator. I forget which is which, but
According to IMDb, Nala Se is credited for 2024.
Yep, Nala Se.
gotcha.
My bad, Star Wars community. My bad.
That's all right. They'll get you in the comments.
Yeah, that's all right. We can take it.
Yeah, she doesn't not once, but I think we see her discard the blood sample twice. So every time Omega's blood is taken, she just gets rid of it.
As long as she can get a hold of it. So yeah, we see that is a concern so far. We also see that Omega has somewhat tried to befriend a little creature in the little lab there. They are monitoring these different creatures, and she notices that this creature has a wound, and she cares about it, and she knows that if the wound doesn't get better, that they will terminate this creature. And so Omega really wants to take care of the creature. She gets some medical supplies eventually and does help clear the wound up. But come to find out that they want to terminate the subject anyways. Let's say
Domesticated.
I'm hoping I'm not crossing over to the third episode yet. I think this is all in this first one. Um,
Yeah, I believe so.
so she wants to help out this creature, and basically what she decides is that she's going to let it free because the way the cage is set up is that you can, access the creature through like basically jail bars, but in the back of it, it allows them to go outside and do what they want to outside. And so she basically lets the creature go outside and try to live out its life.
It's got a little
Hopefully,
doggy door, little doggy tunnel with ray
right.
shields.
I'm trying to get his name.
Isn't it Becker?
What was the
So
guy's name again?
this was actually something I want to ask you guys about.
Yeah.
When Omega is helping this creature, I forget what they're called, but
I think
um,
this one's name is Becker.
I think she named uh yeah, Batcher or something like that. Something with a B, you're right. Um, did you think there was any kind of we've seen little hints that there's more to Omega than meets the eye than we really like found out so far. And there's been like, whispers, I guess, the last couple seasons that she's been like force sensitive. We haven't really seen like super evidence of that, but Beast connection is like one thing that Jedi are pretty known for. So that kind of like was a little flag for me. And just for one split second, I thought she might like try and force heal the wound. So that was what I was going to ask you guys if that like even crossed your mind.
So I got the vibes that it felt very much like when Rey, helped the like serpent creature in episode
Yeah.
2.
Yeah, I got very similar vibes.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to interject some of that um, creature force power thing because that seems to be a favorite of Dave Filoni's. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
I feel like
Ahsoka
where
as
I most
well.
recently saw that was the Ahsoka origin story.
Yep, the little when she was a baby, right? This reminded me of that a lot. So
I'm
yeah,
seeing a theme.
I'm seeing a theme for sure.
But I will
Um,
say we will come back to what you were mentioning about, there's some whispers that she might be force sensitive. I think there's a little bit leaning more into that in episode 3.
yeah, yeah. Only other thing is that they mentioned that the dog wolf thing was injured by another creature on the planet. Did you guys think anything of that? That there's like fearsome big creatures out there?
Well, I think these creatures that they're keeping imprisoned, aren't they like security patrol? Like that's the whole purpose of keeping them.
The dogs, I believe so. Yeah, I kind of figured they're like guard dogs essentially that they can let out on the loose.
Yeah, and we saw at the beginning of this episode too, that a ship was coming in and had to crash land outside of the perimeter zone of this base, and they didn't send any reinforcements because you're outside the perimeter. You're basically a goner because of what's lurking out there in the shadows.
Yeah, I forgot about that part.
And they were
But
big
yeah.
creatures too,
hmm So I'm hoping we get to see some of those.
if not a little bit more.
Right.
Um, Yeah, and I
Uh,
think
what,
pretty much the
uh,
rest of the episode was, I think, oh, so once she let this creature go, I was trying to remember what was the dude's name, started with an H?
the scientist is, I believe it's Hemlock.
Hemlock. So Hemlock comes in and he is basically saying to Omega, like, you thought you were doing something great when you really weren't, because there's something more dangerous out there than these creatures themselves. So you may have, basically sent this creature to its doom anyways, just a more violent way of doing it. And
Well,
so,
Yeah.
he's just on such a power trip because, she's trying to say, well, you were going to terminate him. And he goes, you think you altered that? Like, he's still going to die. Basically, I'm getting my way no matter what, and you can't do anything about it.
yeah. And I kind of like the cadence of his voice. He reminds me a lot of Vader as far as how he delivers his lines. Just super calm and almost like segmented in like two halves with his sentences. It's kind of weird, but I like it.
Yeah, he's been a good evil character so far. You love to hate him. Yeah, a
Yeah.
little bit of um not Darth Vader, but almost like Thrawn vibes a little bit.
Yeah,
But
I would agree.
yeah.
Very
But
bone chilling.
there's something that he basically says to Omega, or she tells him, I know that you won't harm me because um he wants
Namaste.
he wants information from Nalase. And he's like, well, you think you're so smart? I'm not going to hurt you. I'll just hurt someone that you care about, which is Crosshair. Crosshair hasn't been complying with anything that, like retraining and whatnot, that he could be doing to,
Hmm.
be back with the Empire. And so basically,
Yeah.
he's the subject for them to, uh, you know, torture.
And they've been interrogating him since like the last season because they were trying to get information out of him to get the Bad Batch originally.
Right.
When they tracked him down at the end of last season. So he's been kind of going through it. He's been at this lab for a while.
Right. And I can't remember how I think the episode ends right around there. Um, when she now knows that it's a big threat, that he might actually get what he wants.
Did we bring up that Omega visits Crosshair to cell? Because that happens this episode, right?
It does happen. So yeah, she periodically goes and talks to him. That's how,
When there's no guards around, of course.
right. I'm sure there's cameras, like,
Yeah, so they probably knew, but
but yeah,
Well,
she,
that's how Hemlock knew that that's somebody she cares about, right? It's because he sees that she visits him.
I believe so. I think there's got to be some sort of maybe tracker or something, is my guess too. Just because when we see in episode 3, like all the colors on the map, they know where these people are going, but I don't know, maybe. Um, so yeah, we end that episode. I will say some other weird things that is going on is Omega tried to make a toy so that she could have some sort of comfort while she's there, and they said absolutely not, and they took it from her. She also has water dripping from her sink all the time, which would drive you nuts.
yeah, I'm sure there's some symbolism there, but I'm not smart enough to tell you what it is.
I kind of thought so too. I was like, there's got to be something. I know there's like a type of torture where people like drop droplets on your head, but
Yeah,
yeah, just hearing that dripping over and over has got to drive her insane.
yeah.
We also do get quite a time jump too during this process. I mentioned at the beginning she was there only a couple of days, and then they fast forward where she's been there about 2 months ish. There's a lot of check marks on the wall that she scratches into it.
Okay, yeah, I was not tracking those very well, but I guess I could have been. I think they're just like tallies, right? So,
Yeah, they were tallies. And she changed her
okay.
hair too.
Yeah, that was what I did notice actually was the hair because she had her hair back, um, tied back one in one of the shots. So
Right.
that was actually what I noticed because I didn't really process the time uh too well. So I was actually gonna ask you guys if you were able to track like how much time had passed.
It was a split second shot. Like if you look away for 2 seconds, you would have missed it. So
Sure.
yeah.
I missed.
So okay, so it's been a little while, a couple of weeks or something, few weeks, month.
And she wants to get out. And
uh,
eventually we do get some of that stuff.
And it seems like daily blood samples are being taken.
Which would drive me nuts.
I feel like her hair is looking more and more like Emery's. But what's weird to me is that Emery's hair doesn't really look any longer than when they first started, so she must be getting it cut to that length, whereas Omega either doesn't want to or isn't allowed to get her hair cut to her normal length. So maybe just another form of control.
Yeah, I mean Emery's definitely not a prisoner, right? She's working in the lab. She's the lab assistant, as far as we know. Um, Hemlock has a lot of faith in her, so hopefully that backfires on him later in the season. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Episode 2, we do follow the Bad Batch, or at least a couple of them. We get Wrecker and Hunter. We do open the episode kind of abruptly with something different. We see somebody basically kind of on trial for something. Their loyalty is in question, and when we see the person in charge basically push a button and sends them to their doom. So there's like this like red ray shield looking thing that you stand on, and if you're not to their liking, you're dead. So we see that little intro, so we know what the seriousness of this floor. And then we bring in Hunter and Wrecker, and they brought in a prisoner from the Pikes. And when they cut the shot to the assistant that is to the person in charge, he's missing part of his horn. And I said to Sarah, I was like, I think he's the dude from before where they like cut his horn off. And sure enough, when Hunter and Wrecker bring in this Pike, they throw the other piece of his horn to this assistant. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, hopefully they can reattach that just like a dentist would put your teeth back in or something.
Gorilla Glue.
Yeah.
So the reason why that they did this is so they can get some information. Basically, that they felt this leader had information of where some previous Imperial labs may be, and they're looking for a specific one where Hemlock could have been. And so they get this information, and they head out towards this lab. And what they notice is that there's a couple of people, like they think they're almost like tribal people that ambush them, but it turns out that they are former clones, and I forget what they called them. It's like regen or resurgence or something
I
like
think they
that.
just call them regs, right? Because they're like
Regs.
regular clones.
Yes. Um, and so what Hunter and Wrecker say to the regs is that, hey, we're just like you. There's a little bit of suspiciousness going back and forth. Are you part of the Empire? Do we look like we're part of the Empire? And what it boils down to is that these regs will eventually take our two heroes to their leader to try to get some information. The leader's a little apprehensive at first about, discussing things with them, but he eventually does say, hey, yeah, there is a lab out here. It's been abandoned. I think they even said it was bombed at one point or something. But they
Yeah,
were
I don't
willing to take
remember if they come upon the crash site, but yeah, or not the crash site, but they come upon where the lab is and they're able to see like the whole thing is like charred and no more lab.
Yeah, a lot of rubble. I can't remember if it was on their way to seeing the leader or on the way to the lab, but we do get an interesting encounter with some of the planet life. There is like these vine creatures that want to supposedly eat people. And so when they're in the forest, the regs are like, don't touch anything. And they happen to touch something. And so this creature like comes out and attacks them. Our heroes do get away though. Don't you worry. We need the rest of the season.
They brought enough knives.
Yeah, some stabby stabs, some dismembering.
Yeah, the guns are not too effective
Right.
on the vines. That's one thing I did notice.
Don't they have like flamethrowers or something? The clones?
I don't know if they all have the same gear, but you know the Bad Batch, how they do. They always got some fancy bells and whistles.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, it had someone tangled in its vines, so if you're gonna burn the vine, you're gonna burn the victim too.
right. Yeah, that's true. When they at one point, because I think Wrecker gets completely like picked up by the vine, and Hunter has to like cut him down.
Yeah, Hunter
Um,
goes in like Rambo.
yeah, so might not want to flame it, use a flamethrower in that scenario, but in the other scenarios,
Yeah, we could try another ones.
absolutely. That's
Yeah,
actually, I
you're
mean,
just trying to start forest fires. I mean,
little foreshadowing to what they do later. But yeah,
Yeah. So they eventually get to this charred lab and they're looking around trying to find basically a computer that might have some information because it appears that nobody is there. So our clones are kind of out of luck as far as this being the one where Hemlock would be and holding Omega. They kind of almost wonder if Omega might be dead or like could she have been here when all this stuff had happened? But Then they do eventually find this computer. They download some information of where Hemlock could be, maybe the next location that they could check out. But before they can actually leave, there's another big creature. Did you guys pick up? Is this like a similar creature to the vine creature, or is this something completely different?
So
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
what's going on here is that the Empire created these slither vines as part of like a weapon system that they were trying to test out. But it evolved to the point where the Empire couldn't control it anymore, and that's why they had to leave the planet, or at least that's what our remaining survivors are saying. And so I think that's just different evolutions or different life form versions of those same vine creatures.
Yeah, that was kind of how I understood it as well. I didn't know if it was like, one connected vine through the whole place, but rather than that, it might be a bunch of vine creatures. And yeah, we end up seeing, at the end of the episode, I know we're not quite there, but we see that it does have more to its body. It isn't just tendrils of vines. It's got a mouth and an opening at least.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of like a Sarlacc in a way.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking that as well. Especially with all the teeth and everything. It looks just like the Sarlacc pits. Makes you wonder if maybe the bad guys are doing a little gene splicing, combining plants and vines with Sarlacc DNA or something crazy like that.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they're doing a lot of science stuff in other parts of the lab. I'm just trying to hinting at the third episode here a little bit, but
Yeah.
definitely could be. I mean, they're trying to create weapons essentially too. So, I mean, I think we had in season 2 when they were trying to, I forget what the creature's name is, but that big creature from the Clone Wars, that dragon, they were like getting its skin or whatever to be into indestructible armor and whatnot.
Yeah, I remember that. They were trying to make some armor out of it, either for troops or for their ships or something like that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of experiments, even with, like we said, the creatures. So yeah, they barely get away. They try, the thing is pulling down the ship, and basically to try to get out of it, they throw a thermal detonator in there. They find out it doesn't work, and they're like, we just need a whole bunch of these things. So
All the detonators.
yeah, all of them, the whole case. Um, the regs go and grab the case of thermal detonators, and they just toss it over, and they blow that guy up. Is basically having some very, very bad spicy food or whatever going on with that thing. And it lets go of the ship, and they're able to take off and get away. They do have a small discussion here at the end. Did either of you remember what that discussion was? Between them
Not
and the regs?
exactly.
Well, there's two kind of things going on here, right? One is they read the information from the data pad and they're able to figure out, I don't know if it's which galaxy or which system, but kind of a very general area that's very vast to pinpoint them as far as where to go. So they still have a lot of ground to cover, but then the other part is where are the regs going to go? And so they describe this beautiful island where the people will take care of them and, kind of what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And they'll help you figure that out and stuff. And so they're alluding to the island that we've seen in previous seasons. It's really kind of just a paradise away from the Empire.
The Moana planet.
Basically, yeah.
You're welcome. So yeah, that's the end of episode 2. That's basically all that we get from Hunter and Wrecker. Because we do go back to Omega, and this is where things really start to get real. This is probably the episode that made me the most excited moving forward. Emery does get a blood sample from Omega that's Namosu. I'm sorry, you guys.
Now let's say
Now let's
I'll
say.
say.
I'm terrible.
I
Now
think
let's
that one
say
you combined them.
Yeah,
There's a very important guest, and so Nala Se can't run the lab. She has to go
right,
talk to the guest instead.
She
right.
has to be a host.
And who's this amazing guest?
Did you guys know right away, or did you have, I mean, was that your first guess of who it was be?
I figured just from the previews.
Yeah. That was immediately where my mind went as well. I didn't know, who else it would be. Um, I guess the Emperor could have sent one of his underlings, but as we hear him say, this is the most important, I think he says, operation um that he has going on, cooking up.
Yeah, and it's Project Necromancer, which we did hear a little bit about in the Mandalorian show. If we get that call back there, even though it's kind of a call forward since the Mandalorian is, much further down the road. But that's the project that General Hux is overseeing. So the question really is, at least from the initial standpoint, is this Snoke or is this cloning of the Emperor? And we get a kind of a little bit more clarity here. Later on in the episode, there's a couple of things going on. Okay, so there's the Emperor's meeting and what he's up to. There's also the side what Omega is up to. And
Is
Omega's what's
Oh,
that?
it sounds like that's where you're going, but yeah, Omega gets a warning, right?
I was gonna say
From Nala Se.
her blood's in the machine and it's like ticking throughout the episode.
Yeah, but before it even gets there, Nala Se actually warns her before she has to go meet with the Emperor. She warns Omega that, like, hey, if they test your blood, you will be in danger. She doesn't
Right.
give her any more than that, but
Which
that's
kind
enough.
of tells us as the audience, like, hey, Omega is special, but now she's really special. So, um, yeah. So we like I was mentioning, we get the thing turning throughout the whole episode, eventually to where it will be analyzed. So us as the audience is like, oh my God, is she running out of time? Is she gonna get in trouble? Um, But yeah, so she as an Omega is trying to coordinate with Hunter how to escape this place. They had
Crosshair,
content
crosshair.
Crosshair
Yep, you're good.
saying it all. She's talking to Crosshair, and they're trying to coordinate how to get off this planet. They contemplated maybe jacking the Emperor's shuttle, which definitely would have raised some alarms. But they instead know about the ship that crashed earlier on in episode 1, and if they can get that thing up and going, then maybe they can get out of there. So that's basically what they're up to. I want to get to the meat and potatoes of what's going on here with the Emperor. So the Emperor is going in, and we've seen a couple of times in these first, well, 2 episodes that take place here, that there is this high security place with like these red lights that are going through. My guess is the lights kind of work like the Phantom Menace, when we saw the battle with Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan, where if you touch them, bad things will happen to you.
That's what I was
We
thinking too.
we also see them in Mando with Gideon. He has these same things that are cutting off some of his stuff, uh, access to his stuff. And so the Emperor wants to go in there. He wants to check in on some things. And we see these different pods. And the pods are holding something we don't know because we never get to see. Dave Filoni is great at that with teasing us with these things. But one of the things that I thought was pretty striking is that they mention that they have to have the correct count for whatever that they are creating.
An M count.
Yeah. And what is the big M word?
Mandalorian.
I
Oh
don't know
wait, no,
about
that's
that.
not the one you meant. Um, Midichlorian. That's
Yeah,
what it is.
midichlorians. So they're trying to replicate a midichlorian count. So guess, my guess is what's happening is they're trying to clone the Emperor. They're gonna get super close. Maybe this is what happens, you guys. Hold on. Maybe we heard it here first. Maybe they are trying to get the count to replicate the Emperor. And at the end of this season, the Bad Batch tries to stop this process. And it's almost complete, doesn't quite get there. And so basically, what happens is it stops right before it gets super powerful, and that's what Snoke is. Maybe Snoke is something like a project that would be right before the Emperor and his final mode.
You might be onto something.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that was kind of my understanding of the whole new Emperor body in episode 9 versus like Snoke is I always kind of interpreted it as Snoke was like an earlier project, an earlier version, if you will, a rough draft of the clone body, and they weren't able to. Yeah, like you said, it was flawed, right? It wasn't their final version. And even the version they ended up with in episode 9 wasn't was it was still a flawed version. So even 50 years later, they haven't completed this research. So the Bad Batch must do something to slow them down. But yeah, Snoke is must be in the same, research project. It just that one didn't go as far. That was kind of my take on it. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Jeremy.
Yeah, so maybe something like that goes on. I definitely think it's something to do with one of the two at the bare minimum, just because
Yeah.
it's related to midichlorians. I mean, of course, we heard from Qui-Gon in episode 1 that everything has midichlorians, but the count is important because that implies whether you are force sensitive.
Or like how force sensitive.
Yeah. Do you guys want to take the next part? I have something in my eye.
Yeah, you're okay. Um, I mean, I know we got through most of the episode there, I guess.
I didn't know that there wasn't a
Omega,
next part, but talking
y
about the escape maybe.
yeah, the escape. Um, Crosshair is pretty reluctant to escape at first, but Omega eventually convinces him.
Well, she almost
Um,
kind of forces him because she's just winging it, and he he's very methodical, right? He wants to have a plan. He wants to know it's going to work. He can't just trust that it's going to work and trust the process. And I mean, they're eventually she's able to get him out of the cell, and then they escape through the dog's little doggy door. And Emery tries to stop them, but they knock her out or stun her before they actually get detained, right? So they get out through the doggy door, and so now they're Hemlock is like sicking everybody and all the other dogs onto them to try to get them caught and captured. But of course, they're just one step ahead. And as you could kind of predict from when she let Becker or Betcher, whatever her dog's name was, when she let him out and basically said, "You're free, I'll come back for you." Well, he comes back to help her out and to try to help defeat some of the monsters so that she can escape. And they find this ship, and they have a little throwback, I guess you could say, to Tech, who I'm still very upset that he's gone. But Crosshair was asking if she knew about a certain plan or a certain way to maneuver the enemy, right? And she goes, "Well, yeah, I know all Tech made me memorize all of them."
I was just saying it's Plan 72.
Plan 72, there you go. It's very important that you know what number that is.
It is.
But, so then Crosshair's like, "Oh, of course Tech did," because that's just a very Tech thing to do. Um, so they're able to get the ship up and running, and of course they save the dog. He gets up on the ship before it takes off too, which was awesome. And all of Hemlock's guys are trailing the ship and basically right behind it, and they're bombarding it with they're hitting it, and it's not looking really good. But basically, right at this moment, that's when Omega's blood sample results comes back to Hemlock, and he realizes something's not what we thought it was, and I need her alive. Like, don't you dare take her down. She has to stay alive. Let them go. This will just be a minor setback. We'll get them some other time. So he calls all his guys off. They're all very confused. Like, why would we just let him go? Like, that seems silly. We basically have him in our hand right now. But they escape, and now they're out somewhere in the galaxy.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if Hemlock has like a backup plan for capturing them again, or if he's just gonna hire a bounty hunter. Actually, I think Cad Bane is supposed to show up again, so that could be cool. He might hire a bounty hunter or something like that to try and track them down.
I'd
I
be
was
down for
hope
that.
I was hoping they'd bring in Boba Fett. They'd be like, this is the Boba Fett you loved, and then we get some cool action sequences with that. Since we know that there was, the not liking by the majority of the show for Boba Fett.
Yeah, that'd be really cool too. I didn't know, as far as ages go, is Boba Fett like supposed to be close to Omega's age, or do you know?
So he was like a teenager, like between 10 and 13-ish in episode 2. I I'd put him at least 18, maybe low 20s.
Okay, so he should be a little bit older than Omega, probably. Because it seemed like she was maybe one of the later clones. Well, she doesn't have like the aging, also,
Right.
it seems.
Yeah, same as him. He doesn't have the aging.
Yeah. And it seemed like actually we didn't mention this earlier, but the uh the clones that they found on that planet had all escaped from that lab. And they were all a bit on the younger side as well, the like younger models for the clones. So it makes you wonder if they were trying to and they were taking blood from all the clones. So sorry, I've just been thinking about this, but they it seems like they were almost trying to get as many samples as possible so they could narrow down their DNA research to figure out like what little changes, right? Um, and that would tell them, how to tweak things going forward and clone and I don't know. I'm liking that the research is starting to make like a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I'm glad we're getting some clarity within the research too, because like when Mando went to that Imperial base or lab one time and we saw that there were some things going on, they basically just showed us something and they didn't explain anything. So yeah, it is nice that we're finally getting some information, which is why I'm hoping we start to get more information about this Project Necromancer as well.
Yeah, how long is the season?
15 or 16 episodes. I think it's 15.
Pretty
And I
decent.
believe it ends right around the beginning of May, like right before Star Wars Day. So
All right.
we have that long to find out.
Yeah. It was nice that we got this little 3 episodes at the beginning.
Thank goodness we did, because that first one by itself was okay, but was it enough to keep me going? Ooh, I don't know about that. I'm really glad that we had a handful to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did just the right amount. We found out what's Omega been going through. We got some updates on Wrecker and Hunter, and then we got kind of what could be setting this season in motion with the third episode. So yeah, I'm excited to see what else we could get out of this and who we might see along the way.
Yeah. Unfortunately, only one episode next week. But yeah. Oh, another thing we didn't talk about. Crosshair, I think because they've been experimenting on him and stuff like that, he's not in good shape. Like he had like really shaky hands.
Yeah.
Omega kind of
Oh,
noticed.
mhm.
Um,
It almost seems
so
like he's developing Parkinson's or something.
yeah, there's something going on there. So I'm wondering if that's going to affect his shooting ability at all. I mean, we saw him take out a couple guards, no problem, but maybe his sharpshooting is really going to be affected. We'll kind of have to wait and see.
So do you think that's from them testing on him, or do you think maybe it ended up being a defect in them?
That's a good question. It could be either one. I assumed it was because they've been like testing on him and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that might echo that a little bit is in the second episode, when the regs are talking to Wrecker and Hunter, the regs call them defective, and Wrecker said defective and effective, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe that's foreshadowing.
Yeah, it could be. I'm sure they heard that a lot, being the squad they were, being Clone Force 99. I'm sure they got that all the time from any other group, that they're like the defective clones, but really they're getting more done than any of them.
Sarah, were you trying to say something really?
I thought where Austin was going when he was talking about the regs was whether or not that they have the aging or age the sped up aging, and so I was gonna say I think that they do, and the reason for me thinking that is because the one had talked about being the top of his flight school,
Oh, okay.
and I feel like if you were progressing at least mentally, at a normal rate, you wouldn't really be able to be in a flight school at all, let alone top of your class. So I feel like he's at least mentally progressing a lot faster than maybe Omega is.
That's a good point. All those troopers or clones seemed pretty capable. Like they had at least had normal training at the beginning.
Yeah. So was there anything else you guys wanted to mention about the first three?
I'm just
Um,
sad we're only getting one next week.
yeah, that's pretty much it. Sad we're only getting one. Excited to see what other answers and questions we'll have next week.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if, because I mean, the Star Wars shows have had somewhat of a pace issue. At least that's what fans have talked about, and maybe they know what they got for their episode content. So maybe next week's episode will have enough to chew on where we only need one, and the ones that have two, like today or this week, I should say, when we got three of them, like we said, we needed those three to want to keep going on. So maybe they kind of know where they need to add in an extra one or not. So who knows? I'm optimistic about it, and I'm curious to see where it ends up.
Yeah, seems like they might have some like two-parters planned and stuff like that for the double weekends. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. All right. So that was our discussion for the first three episodes of the Bad Batch Season 3. Check back here next week with those notifications turned on to see what we have for you for episode 4. Like we all said, we're excited to see where that ends up. Subscribe to the channel if you liked the video, drops a like if you liked it, and also drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on the 3 episodes, where you think the show is going, and what your thoughts are on that Project Necromancer. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.